Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode, as part of the Animal Health Ireland and Teagasc Calf Care Virtual Week, I'm joined by Teagasc researcher Emer Kennedy and Joe Patton, Teagasc nutritionist, to discuss the guidelines for feeding milk and concentrates in the diet of the calf. I first asked Emer, what happens after colostrum is fed?
So after its colostrum feed, the calf needs to get transition milk. So transition milk is milkings 2 to 6 produced by the dairy cow after calving. So only that first milking is called colostrum, the rest are called transition milk. Although the calf can't absorb any more antibodies after it's 24 hours old, there is a local effect in the lining of the gut by consuming transition milk. And basically what it does is it keeps the calf a little bit healthier. It stops it getting sick, and it reduces the incidence of droopy ears and runny nose. So when we talk about transition milk, the calf needs to get at least 4 feeds of transition milk. And again, that's really important, particularly if you're vaccinating, for rotavirus or that the calf is getting enough of the antibodies to build up immunity.
And how much of this milk should the calf be getting?
So the calf should get 2 to 2.5 litres per feed. So that's 4 to 5 litres per day. So 2 feeds, and basically what you're trying to do is work the amount of milk that the calf gets gradually up, so that by the end of the first week you're feeding the calf 6 litres of milk per day. So if we say, your calf is going to get its colostrum feed, then it's going to get at least 4 feeds of transition milk, and then it can move on to either whole milk or milk replacer. If we talk about whole milk that you're feeding the calf, that means milk that's suitable to go off for processing in the lorry or to be picked up by the co-op. That's the milk that should be fed to the calf, not milk that has any antibiotic residues in it, or is high in cell count, because frequently that milk, there can be an off taste in it, so the calf won't drink as much, and also it can have issues subsequently for the calf's health. The other alternative then, of course, is milk replacer, and again, a good quality milk replacer, so a high enough protein content, high enough fat content, and limited ash and crude fibre in it.
And how soon can milk replacer start to be fed to the young calf?
So the milk replacer can be fed straight after the transition milk feeding. So from about 4 days. Now, if there's a ionase issue in the herd, you can go a little bit sooner, but your colostrum management has to be followed critically to the 1, 2, 3 rule. But ideally, I think the best practice is to feed the transition milk and then go on to your milk replacer.
And in most cases, when the dairy calf comes off the dairy farm and onto the beef farm, what should the management be once it lands onto the beef farm?
So this is going to depend on how far the calf has travelled. So the calf should be fed milk before it leaves the farm of origin, we'll say, and when it gets onto your farm, if you've bought it in, that evening you should feed it electrolytes, probably not the milk. You feed it some electrolytes, 2 to 3 litres, and let the calf rest overnight, and then the following morning it can be fed milk, and it depends then on how far the calf has travelled. If it's travelled a long way, it might need electrolytes again that evening, but if it's only a short distance, you can resume milk feeding at that stage, making sure that the calf is getting its 6 litres per day in 2 feeds.
And how soon can the calf be put onto once a day feeding then?
So it's really important that calves aren't fed their milk once a day before 4 weeks of age. So only start once a day feeding from 4 weeks of age onwards. There's a number of reasons for this. One, the abomasum of the calf is too small to handle that large volume of milk. So we're talking about 6 litres. So for calves less than 4 weeks old, that's a large volume of milk to consume all in one go. The other reason is that because the calves are born their digestive system isn't developed, the rumen isn't developed, it means that they can't take any nutrients from concentrate until the rumen starts to develop, and that starts to occur 3 to 4 weeks of age. So from that point on, from 4 weeks on, you could go to once a day milking, but you still need to check your calves thoroughly twice daily. So maybe give them their milk feed in the morning and give them the concentrate in the evening. giving you the chance to thoroughly check them to ensure that they're healthy, because if they're sick, you want to pick it up fast and take action fast so that you can cure them as rapidly as possible.
Emer, what are the key steps when it comes to mixing up milk replacer?
So making the milk replacer, it's important that you follow the manufacturer's recommendations on the back of the bag. So like, for example, for calves, we'll take dairy calves, for example, the recommended crude protein content is 23 to 26%, and preferably milk-derived proteins in the milk replacer. So if you use very hot water on that, you're actually going to kill those proteins. So what you've spent all the money on buying, you're basically undoing that. So the correct thing to do is to get the temperature of the water correct first. So, add in your hot water, add in your cold until you get it to about body temperature, and then add in your powder. Don't be tempted to put the powder in first and the water on top of it. So once that's done, you need to mix it thoroughly. The other thing to watch out for is how you mix it. And again, this is going to be down to the manufacturer's specifications. Like, do the water and the powder add up to a litre, or are you putting a litre of water in and the powder on top of that? So you just need to check what the dilution rate or how you mix it up is. And again, to decide what your reconstitution rate is it going to be like 12.5% or 15%, which means, are you going to put 125 grams of powder or 150 grams of powder in each litre of water?
That's great, Emer. Once the calf has been fed on the milk replacer for a number of weeks, how soon can they be weaned?
The calves can be weaned basically once they're eating a kilo of concentrate. And that's an individual calf rather than a group eating a kilo concentrate. When it comes to weaning, like, you don't want to abruptly wean the calf, because that's going to affect your weight gain subsequently. So, if you're feeding twice a day, one of the things that you can do is reduce the calves back to once a day feeding at that point, and reduce the volume of milk. Or if you prefer to stay twice a day feeding, also reduce the volume of milk. So basically, you're gradually weaning the calves over 7 to 10 days to ensure that there's no post-weaning growth check.
And is there any evidence to suggest feeding the calf once a day or twice a day increases or decreases performance?
So in any of the experiments that we have done looking at once a day versus twice a day milk feeding, there's been no difference in performance between either group of calves. What you do find is that the once a day calves, they tend to eat more concentrate, and they probably drink more water as well. So that's why, it's necessary to keep the trough topped up with the concentrate if you are once a day feeding.
That's great. Thanks very much, Emer. Joe, concentrates and forage are important to the calf's diet. How early should solid feed be introduced?
Hi, Catherine. Yeah, look, it's probably in the first week, really, we should be looking at introducing some sort of core starter concentrate, Catherine. Now, look, the amount that will be eaten in that first week is going to be relatively small, but it's just to get animals in, get your calves into the habit of starting to nibble that starter concentrate, I suppose. So really what we want to do there is, obviously the animal or the calf is reliant on its milk at that point for its nutrients, but getting the animal onto a start for solid feed is important to start kickstarting the development of the rumen in the young calf. So I would say the first few days we should be starting in with a high quality starter ration.
And what kind of ingredients or spec should we be feeding in the starter ration?
Yeah, well, look, as I say, the amount that will be eaten will be very, very small indeed. It's a tiny amount per calf at the start. So when we are looking at small amounts, we should really be looking at quality then to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. So high quality ingredients would be things like flake maize, maybe barley, soybean, obviously, a little bit of beet pulp, maybe in smaller pellets. Maybe some inclusion of maybe something like peas or something like that as a protein source as well. So a coarse blend of high protein, high energy ingredients that are all palatable to the calf. Now, obviously, a little bit of molasses maybe as well. Something like maybe 5% molasses included will increase the palatability of the coarse concentrate to get the calf started into the habit of eating it.
And is there anything else that can be done to try to get the calf in eating the concentrates at the very start?
I suppose, look, I think the quality is important, and if we go with the ingredients we've just after talking about, that it's making sure that it's not too dusty, for example. A good quality ration would be important. Obviously, then a clean trough, not putting out, small and often in terms of the feeding. And keeping the troughs clean, not overloading troughs. So really offering a small bit to get calves moving on it, and then removing any refused material or any contaminated material daily, I suppose. And once you start to see them moving, then in terms of nibbling at it, I suppose, then you can sort of gradually increase the amount. But it's going to be relatively small overall. It's really to get a kickstart doing. So a clean trough, I suppose. Don't overload it at the start. Feed it small and often, and obviously the high quality ingredient. Those would be the main points, I think, to get them going.
And what rate of meal should be needed by the calf as they get closer to weaning stage?
Well, yeah, as Emer said, they're in and around the kilo, I suppose, as you move from your starter concentrate or your starter coarse blend, you'll probably move on to a pellet then after a while, and then you're on to maybe your calf nut, if you like, your calf pellet. As you move closer to weaning, you're probably talking about making sure the calves are eating about a kilo of concentrate of that consistently at that period. So over time, you can obviously look at that. You can track that if you're feeding it in small bags. How much are they actually eating? You would like to see the calves eating a kilo of ration before removing milk. And obviously, as Emer said there, maybe a gradual reduction of milk in the last period before weaning will encourage increased concentrate intake, which is very important.
And would you consider reducing the meal intake if calves were outdoors prior to weaning?
I suppose probably not pre-weaning, Catherine. I suppose the one thing we want to make sure when we're talking about pre-weaning nutrition is that obviously we're trying to hit the growth rates of the calf, obviously, and that will be driven primarily by the milk intake. But the concentrate intake, and maybe to some extent also the roughage intake, but particularly the concentrate intake, is important to allow the calves to develop a functioning rumen. And it'll take till about 10 to 12 weeks of age before the calf has a fully functioning rumen. So I think to keep it simple, I suppose we should still be targeting that kilo of intake even at grass, because at that stage, on a pre-weaned calf, there's not going to be a huge amount of grass intake at that point. I think we get them to the point of weaning on the kilo, and then we can start thinking about maybe reducing that as the calves have settled into a grazing system. But I think in the pre-weaning period, I would keep them going on the kilo, even though they're outside in some cases.
And you touched on it there, calves won't be eating much grass outside. How important is long fibre for the young calf?
The calf, yeah, look, long fibre is important, but it doesn't. It is important for sure to get calves eating long fibre. So obviously something like straw, chopped straw, ideally would be important. So that's kind of offered. That's offered in a rack. Obviously, clean chopped straw would be important. Probably preferable to hay, actually, because we don't want them eating too much. We don't want them eating too much fibre that could result in pot bellies that you often might see with lower quality hay. So, but it is important that they have some intake of long fibre pre-weaning. But it is important to remember, though, that the principal driver of rumen development will be the concentrate intake along with the fibre. It's not like hay or straw alone plus milk won't deliver the type of functioning rumen that we want. We need the long fibre and the concentrate together to have that proper effect.
That's great, Joe. I suppose I'll open it up to the two of you. What final guidelines for feeding milk and concentrates? What final tip have you for farmers? Emer?
Like to make sure that calves are getting the 6 litres of milk. Traditionally farmers have been feeding like 2 litres in the morning, 2 litres in the evening. But I think, now we need to ensure that all calves are receiving about 15% of their birth body weight, which is like 6 litres for a 40-kilo calf, to ensure good growth rates. And that, again, provides them with enough energy to fight off any disease. And farmers who are worried about calves scouring on 6 litres of milk, it's not an issue. It just means that the calves are well fed and that they'll grow that bit better. So I think that'll be my top tip, is to ensure that the volumes of milk fed are up to the 6 litres.
That's great. And Joe?
Yeah, Catherine, I suppose my one thing would be to say that, while milk will drive the growth rate in the calf, and properly so, as Emer's just said, I think we also have to be thinking about rumen development in the pre-weaning phase. So solid feed and good quality and the right amount of intake of solid feed will drive rumen development, which will make the management of the calf in the post-weaning period a lot easier. So be conscious of the quality of the starter ration that you use. Be conscious of the quality of the concentrate that you use. Measure, monitor the amount of concentrate that's actually been fed and eaten, which is important. And then, in terms of the long fiber, clean good quality straw would be preferable to hay, to ensure we don't end up with pot-bellied calves. Those would be the main points that I would have.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks very much, Emer and Joe.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Joe and Emer for joining me on the show. You can tune in to the Dairy Edge podcast this week to hear about the 1, 2, 3 of colostrum management, colostrum quality, and managing Johne's disease at calving. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.